The SBA just changed everything. On April 22nd, 2025, the SBA dropped a brand new SOP that tightens up lending guidelines for their flagship 7A program. These changes will go into effect June 1st, 2025, and will greatly impact small business owners seeking access to capital. Hey, I'm Ray Drew, an actual SBA lender, and in this video, I'm gonna walk through the top 10 biggest changes to the 7A program. Changes that will impact business acquisitions, debt refinance, startup lending, virtually everything, so stick around. Big takeaway right off the bat is that the guidelines have been tightened, but let's put that into perspective. In 2023, the SBA loosened up the guidelines like never before, so a lot of this is just returning to normal. And the reason they did that is because the defaults have increased, and those increases, coupled with the fact that they didn't take in any money on the majority of their loans because they were waiving fees, resulted in the SBA losing money last year. And so the SBA not only rolled back many of those changes that were made in 2023, but they also put new guardrails into place to further tighten the program. Now, the good news is that the SBA program will survive and continue to be around for many years to support small business owners looking to start, grow, and acquire small businesses. It's just going to look a little different. For example, the SBA is no longer going to allow preferred lenders to send their loans to the SBA for approval. Now, this one shouldn't affect you too much, but it is interesting. You know how I always say you have to work with a preferred lender? That's because preferred lenders approve SBA loans in-house on behalf of the SBA. They don't have to send the loan to the SBA for a second approval, like non-preferred lenders have to do. But sometimes a preferred lender gets a deal that's in the gray area, and so they send it to the SBA for approval despite having preferred lender authority. Well, the SBA no longer allows that, and quite frankly, they have no choice. They just laid off 40% of their staff. So what this means is that preferred lenders will have to use their delegated authority on 100% of the loans that they approve. And the reason this is important is because it highlights how short-staffed the SBA has become, and perhaps a sign of what's to come. All right, now let's get into some of the other changes. You may have already heard about the first two because they were announced prior to this new SOP dropping, and those are the SBA fees are back on all loans across the board, and also businesses must be 100% owned by US citizens and legal permanent residents, a shift from the previous cutoff of 51%. But these changes were just the tip of the iceberg. The changes to the new SOP were extensive, but if you've been in the SBA world for more than just the last few years, you know that most of this is just a return to normal. See, the SBA is rooted in old school banking, and the last administration surfed the silver tsunami all the way to the FinTech convention, but this administration is taking us back to Prudent Lending 101. That said, the new SOP dealt fatal blows to 3 types of projects that you as a small business owner need to know about. Number 1, merchant cash advance. No longer can you refinance an MCA with an SBA loan. But wait, there's more. You also can't refinance factoring agreements with SBA loans anymore. So I guess think twice before you take on either of those 2 forms of financing, because the escape hatch of SBA is no longer. Number 2, the small loan program was taken out at the knees. SBA 7A small loans went up to $500,000 a few years back, and they loosened up the guidelines so that lenders could get capital out to these small business owners on these small dollar loans and compete with the fintechs, but that's all coming to an end. These small loans have been reduced back down to $350,000, and the requirements have been tightened. The minimum SBSS score, that's the SBA's proprietary credit scoring model, has been increased from a minimum of 155 to 165, and a lot of the red tape around this program has been put back on. One of the biggest differences of the small 7A program versus the standard 7A loan is that on the standard 7A loan, you must take all available collateral. It means second liens on your house, for example. Whereas the small loans, they don't require that. But now if you have a $400,000 or $500,000 loan, that's considered a standard 7A loan, and you will need to pledge your real estate collateral. Bummer. Number 3 is near and dear to my heart because my specialty is business acquisitions, and I recently stated that the introduction of partial change of ownership transactions, where the seller is allowed to stay on with the ownership was the best new rule of 2023. Well, they ruined it. Now, if a seller is going to stay on, they must personally guarantee the buyer's loan for 2 years. And not only that, but if the buyer has investors on the cap table, those investors must sign on to the loan too, even if they own 1%. Makes no sense. So because of these 2 new rules, I'm calling it. Time of death, 12:15 p.m., Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. She had a short life, but a good life. She helped a lot of buyers transition more seamlessly, and for that, I'd like to think she's in heaven right now. May she rest in peace. Now, aside from decimating those 3 areas, there are some pretty significant changes to the 7A program that you need to know. So let's fly through them. Equity injection for business acquisitions is back to exactly what it was 2 SOPs ago. When using an SBA loan to buy a business, you must put in a minimum of 10% of the total project cost. And the seller note will only be considered equity if it's on full standby for the life of the SBA loan. And you can use that for up to half the required injection. So 5% cash, 5% standby seller note. The franchise directory is back. So if you're a franchisee, be sure your franchise is on the directory or else you will not be able to board this plane. The credit elsewhere test is back in full force. So basically what that means is that the lender needs to document why you need this loan. And going forward, high net worth individuals with a lot of excess cash are going to have a really hard time getting an SBA loan. Whereas in the past couple of years, the SOP specifically said that didn't matter. Well, now it does. And finally, a defined minimum equity injection is back for startup businesses, and it is 10%. These changes are sure to shake up the SBA lending landscape once again, so make sure you follow along as things unfold so that you can make smart decisions for your business when it comes to borrowing money. So there you have it. If you found that video helpful and you want more expert advice from an actual SBA lender, then I would invite you to hit that subscribe button because I've got plenty more where that came from.